Okay, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Fred. Okay, good morning again.
Good morning.
Let's hear a little more excitement than that. You know, there's an old saying, it's never too late to learn, but sometimes it can be too early for some of you. And for those of you sort of just waking up, a little grumpy, looking like, so what on your face? What's this guy going to talk about? I heard this prayer that was for you guys specifically, and it went like this. It said, "Dear God, so far today, I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, and I haven't lost my temper. I haven't been nasty, grumpy, or selfish. In a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed, and that's going to need a lot of help." Amen. So hopefully you're wide awake and ready to go, because in the short time I have with you today, what I really want to do is share some tips, tools, and solutions to build rapport, relationships, and connect in order to get customers, to keep them, and to get enthusiastic referrals. So that's the bottom line. And to put this into perspective, too, of why this is important, just want to start off by asking a question. How many of you would be happy if everything went right? Quality of service, reliability, responsiveness, your prospecting. How would be happy if everything went right, let's say 90% of the time? Just by a show of hands, how would be happy at 90%? How about 95? How come there's less for 95? Anyway, how about 97? Well, you know, there are some companies that literally have a 99.9% success rate. For example, Federal Express, 99.9% on-time delivery. Motorola has even a better success rate than that. So assume everybody be happy if everything went right, 99.9, 1/10 of 1% off. Well, if you're happy with this, let me just share some statistics with you to start us off. And the first one is there. It said 12 babies would be given to the wrong parents daily. And when I first saw this, I was like sitting in a meeting like you. It was like right before lunch, you know, and I said, and you know, it's like, you know how you just want to get to lunch and leave, and that's my mind. But you know how some of these things hit you later? Anybody ever seen that? And you're not thinking about it now because your mind's just like, okay, when's this over and all that stuff. But then it hit me, and you know the reason this hit me? Because let me ask you a question. How many of you have kids in here that don't look like you at all? And then I started wondering about it, because I actually have a son who's tall and good looking, so I wondered where he came from. And actually, has anybody saw that in the paper a while ago? There was a kid who was like 24 years old, and he was from Southwest Virginia. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And he was actually, they found out he was switched at birth. It was actually a true story. And then I thought about it. Wouldn't it be great if you could get rid of your kid, give your kid away until they go through college and somebody else pays for it and all that stuff, and go from there? But anyway, moving on. Also with these statistics, it said 18,322 pieces of mail would be mishandled per hour. 2 million documents will be lost by the IRS this year, and the list goes on and on and on. And the point I'm bringing this up is, the question is, would you still be satisfied? Would your customers be satisfied? Would your prospects be satisfied? Because the bottom line is, good is not good enough. You know, expectations are getting higher, the bar is being raised, and you are always being judged, not by just other companies that work with you, but by other people's experiences. For example, I travel quite frequently. Actually, my next frequent flyer award's a plane, believe it or not, but I do so much of this stuff, but I fly a bit, and I stay at a lot of hotels. I do a lot of workshops and seminars and keynotes around the country, and I usually get breakfast like at 6 a.m., you know, room service. And when you get room service at 6 a.m., a lot of times it comes at what, 5 of, 5 after, but who really cares, right? Who really cares? But then when I stay at when I stay at other hotels, when I stay at Marriott's and I order room service at 6 a.m., it comes what? It comes right at 6 a.m. So I don't get upset just at other hotels, but I get upset, not at you personally, or you, when you're late for a meeting, for example. Something simple as that aspect of it. For example, is anybody a purchasing agent in here, by the way? Just purchasing agents? There was a study recently, and I saw this. It was really amazing. The Professional Purchasing Agents Association, they did a study, and take a guess. What's the number one reason why professional purchasing agents don't deal with salespeople? Take a guess.
Tardiness?
Yeah, they're late, believe it or not. And how many of us are late? Anybody ever been late here before? They're late for a meeting, and sometimes, so these little things get in the way, and if some other people are good at that, then that changes. By the way, just some quick things I just want to mention right here real quickly, too, is I am going to move relatively quick, because when we talk about dealing with customers and clients and prospects, the average attention span of an adult, anybody want to take a guess? What's the average attention span of an adult?
10 seconds.
20 minutes is too long. 5 minutes is too long. 2 minutes is too long. Somebody said it. 8 seconds, yeah. The average, believe it or not, the average attention span of an adult is literally about 8 seconds, which means people are probably wondering who I am again. I'll explain this, but people are probably, when you talk about 8 seconds, people will listen to you longer, but you better have something they want to say, you better be energized, you better be enthusiastic. All these things play into the thing. Because how many of you do that? How many of you listen to somebody, you tune in, tune out? Anybody do that? Tune in, tune out, and you really got to watch it, and that's the reason a lot of times we don't, some gets in the way of sales. Also, another thing I want to mention too, the average person looks at their cell phone. According to T-Mobile and Sprint, there was a study done. The average person looks at their cell phone how many times a day? Say 20,000 something. Some of you, I probably have no clue what I'm saying now, but actually, believe it or not, they said it was 141 times a day. So there we got problems going on. So things happen. And by the way, one other thing I'm going to say too is a lot of what I'm going to talk about, a lot of this is not rocket science. And I just want to say this right off the bat. What you know is irrelevant. What you know is irrelevant. It's what you actually do and the action you take, like Fred was saying earlier. You've got to take that action. And when I talk about action, how many of you heard of the 5-second rule? Anybody heard of the 5-second rule? What's the 5-second rule?
You can eat it if it's on the floor.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's not food falling on the floor. That's a different 5-second rule. Okay, we got a different. Some of you are eating the floor. Some of you are eating off the floor here, but no, that's not the rule. But anybody want to know? Anybody heard of the other 5-second rule? Okay, 5-second rule, neuroscientists have found that if you don't do something in 5 seconds sometimes, you don't do it. So for example, you ever sat at your desk and you say, hey, should I call that person? And if you think too long about it, what happens? Your brain gets in the way and no. Or let's say you go to a meeting like this and you say, hey, should I talk to Alan over there? And it's like, I look at him, you ever done that? And you say, nah, maybe not. And then you just do it out. And so what's Nike's philosophy? It's what?
Just do it.
Just do it. Yeah, it's not do it, it's what? It's just do it. So I want you to keep on that aspect of it too. The other thing I want you to do from another networking standpoint, because we can't have prospects unless we meet people in the first place, so we need to work on that aspect of it. And another networking tip that I learned too is, did you notice I didn't get to meet everybody, but didn't I meet a lot of people here before? A lot of you hands up. It just got overwhelming, but I stood by the door. I tried to meet everybody when you come in, and there's an old saying, play the host, no matter where you are. For example, I go to parties, and I'm not even, it's my wife's party or something, and nobody knows who the heck I am. I start by the door. Everybody thinks that I'm running the place, and then you meet a lot of people. But there's a term I want to talk about is that how many of you remember when you were kids? Anybody remember that long ago? Okay. And when you wanted to meet somebody or play with somebody, what did you do? You just went over and you said, what? Hey, do you want to play? You want to play? You want to play? But what happens when we get to be adults? We don't do what? If I said, do you want to play, she'd look at me and like, yeah, get out of here. I'm leaving, okay? I'm leaving right now. But there's a woman named Neen James who's also a speaker, and I thought this was pretty interesting because I think we're all reluctant sometimes. We're reluctant just to go up to strangers. And she had this thing, and you may want to write this down. It sounds corny, but she says, every time I go out somewhere, I think everybody wants to play with me. Think about that. It sounds corny, it sounds squishy, it sounds weird, but everybody wants to play with me. And so when I go in a meeting, everybody wants to play with me. And so it's just like when you were a kid. I'm not getting that reaction too well here, but the point is, think about that. Everybody wants to play with you. It's just like you're a little kid. And it's amazing because people do want to connect. And when we look at it, people do want to connect with others. So just a few things to keep you in mind on that. Now, moving along, what I want to do, I'm going to take you through a formula here that I use sort of dealing with prospects and customers and getting referrals and stuff. Is the first thing is you can't really get that aspect of it. You can't really get that aspect of it unless you really, you need to get their attention, as we said. What do we say? There's like an 8-second attention span if you want to talk to anybody or else they get bored really quickly. And I just want to say this right off the bat. People are more convinced by your energy, enthusiasm, and conviction than anything else you do. People are more convinced by your energy, enthusiasm, and conviction than anything else you do. So I want to give you a little exercise. If you turn to your page 2 there, I want you to take and read this really. I'm going to have you do an exercise. I do this 20 times before I have to give a speech or whether I'm meeting a client because we want to raise our voice, right? We want to get a little more enthusiastic sometimes. So everybody turn to page 2, and I'm going to have you read this with me. So this is going to get pretty loud in here because we're all salespeople and you're good at this already. But I'd like you to read it where it says, there was an old man who lived in the wood whose trade was cutting. And when it says the highlighted words, I want you to yell that out. Broom, green, broom. And then 'twas night, what was it? Noon, bright noon. And so the reason I'm doing this to help people, what we say, people need to be more. You need to be more enthusiastic, convincing, to be more convincing in that area. And this is an exercise you may want to try before you go out and take with you. So everybody ready to start? All right. Okay. So everybody, here it goes. There was an old man. Everybody. Yep. There was an old man who lived in the wood, whose trade was cutting a broom, green broom. He had with one son without thrift, without good, who lay in his bed till 'twas noon, right noon. Okay, you got it. The old man awoke one morning and spoke. He swore he would fire that room. If John would not rise and open his eyes and away to the what? To cut broom, green broom. So Johnny arose, he slipped on his clothes and away to the wood to cut broom, green broom. There we go. And slipped on his knives, for once he contrives to cut a bundle of broom, green broom. When Johnny passed under that lady's fine house, paced under that lady's fine room, he sharpened his knives. What? He sharpened. You son. Green broom. When Johnny came in that fine lady's house and stood in that lady's fine room. Young Johnny, my lad, will you give up your trade and marry a lady in bloom, full bloom? John gave his consent, and to church they both went, and he married the lady in bloom, full bloom. At market and fair, all the folks did declare, there's none like the boy that sold broom, green broom. Give yourself a hand there. All right, good, yeah. So take this. The next time you're going to talk to a prospect, you're going to do a speech, you're going to do a seminar or something, take this with you, do it. I go over 20 times before I do it because it actually gets you more engaged and you start doing it. And by the way, you don't want to, say broom, green broom to everybody, but you want to emphasize and highlight those words and punch it out because if you don't, people you're just going to lose their attention as far as that goes. So now that we have that attention, what I wanted to say further is to build that rapport, to get customers, to keep them, to get that enthusiastic referrals. I want to talk about this a little bit today too. The bottom line, oops. You know what, actually, just to put this in the mind here, if we do everything we're going to talk about today, you'll get along with like these guys too here. So that's what I had in that mind. But the thing I want to talk about a little more in this aspect is the fact that it's really about, not just prospects, but it's the best customers we have are what? Who are what? The ones we have already, because they like you. And I'd rather have 100 good customers than 1,000 prospects in the first place, because they like you, I don't have to explain everything, and we get it. And I always like this quote by Jeffrey Gitomer, who said this. Oops, what did Jeffrey Gitomer say? He said, customer service is nothing, customer loyalty is everything when you really boil it down to it. And we're going to focus on how do we build the prospects, but also get that loyalty that we're coming from. So we did that. And also on the speaking, I always like this part too. The ability to speak is a short distinction. It puts a man or woman in the limelight, raises them head or shoulders above the crowd, and the man or woman who can speak acceptably is usually given credit for an ability all out of proportion to what he or she really possesses. So even if you don't know what you're talking about and you sound enthusiastic, you ever done that? Have you ever watched something from somebody and you have no clue what but they just sounded so good and you just followed them, So that's the reason I wanted to give that to you. So the bottom line of this today is this, is the soft skills, those people skills that we're going to talk about are really going to give us the what? The hard results that we really want to get in the long run. And to put this into perspective a little bit too, 90% of the problems I see when I work with companies and organizations and associations and individuals and stuff like this is the problems boil down to some communication breakdown one way or other, whether it's sales or whatever. It's either miscommunication, it's misunderstandings, it's mistrust, or it's misinformation. It really comes down to 4 areas, and we're going to work on those today too. And I always like this quote by Teddy Roosevelt, who said, the single most important ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along and connect with others when you really boil it down to it. How many of you have ever seen Dancing with the Stars? Anybody seen Dancing with the Stars? Okay, there's a guy, Nigel. Is it still on, Dancing with the Stars? I can't, or no, I'm not sure. Has anybody been in it? I don't know. It might be somebody in here or in there. But he said this. He said, it's not necessarily the best dancers who win. It's what? It's the ones they like the most. Now, before I move on this, by the way, what did I do wrong with this slide? Because I know it's going to bother some people. That's what? There's a typo. No? Oh, there is a typo. I didn't even notice that. But what else?
Nigel's on a different show.
Yeah, this is Dancing with the Stars slide. So, because I always have somebody come up and say, but I like the 10, so that's why I put it there. So forget that one right there and go from there. But it makes a point. So here's the bottom line of this. Everything being equal, what? People deal with what? We all know that, right? People deal with people they like and they trust. But here's the other aspect of it. Everything being unequal, they still deal with people they like and they trust. For example, how many of you have ever gone to buy a car and you went shopping for the car and the right price, the right product, that you love the car, but there was just something about the salesperson you didn't like. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you had that thing, there was just something about that, or maybe you didn't hire a vendor or somebody to work on your house. They were perfect in what they said, and they did, and the price was right, but we turned them down. And so we're going to talk about some of those skills today to make that happen, to make that work for you. So we're going to look at that. So the study, basically going into this fact that I want to keep emphasizing here, is that people skills do matter. And there was a study done by Harvard and Stanford University a while ago that said that only 15% of your success at your job in relation to persuading, motivating, influencing, getting more sales is going to be due to what? Your technical aspects that you have, what you know about it. And 85% is going to be your communication, your people skills, and your emotional intelligence when you really boil it down to it. So those are the factors that we need to look at it. And by the way, if you don't believe me on this too, let me just give you a couple examples, and I'm sure you have some here too, but we don't have all day too much for this. But recently there was somebody who was going to hire me for a speech out in California, and I sent an email to him. Has anybody ever done this? I spelled their name wrong. And the guy got berserk. He went on the phone and he says, "We were thinking of hiring you, and you were and you're this communication expert and this people's and sales." It kept going on and on and on. And he spelled my name wrong. And you know what? And what's Dale Carnegie's famous rule? The most important thing to anybody is their name. And so, you got to watch out for that. Or has anybody sent an email to somebody and you put the wrong tone in it? You highlighted something the wrong way. And all these things get in the way of doing that. Or you walk down into your client's office. Anybody ever done this? A potential client's office, and I see this. I do a lot of work with Lexus and Toyota and a lot of car dealers all over the country, and one of the things I'll watch is the field travelers, the people that work with. Has anybody worked for Lexus and Toyota or any of those places? Okay, somebody there, yeah. And what I do is I'll walk in. There's people called field travelers who are from the corporate offices, and some of them are really good. They'll talk to everybody in there. They'll know everybody. And then, do you know anybody like this? How many of you ever do this? You just you run right in and you just go right to the person who's the key person there, and then we forget all the other people around. And I would really watch out for that, because that's the thing that's going to help you in the long run. Now, another thing I want to mention too is when we go into our client's office, and we got to watch out this, and we get prospects, we got to watch out that we don't stereotype anybody. And what I mean by stereotype anybody, we're wired for bias, whether you say it or whether you want to believe that or not. But we're wired for bias. We make snap judgments on people. We make assumptions on people, which can really get us into trouble in certain areas. And we can lose a lot of sales that way just by doing it. And to make my point on that, I'm just going to do a little exercise real quickly here, and I'll explain what it means here in a minute. But give me some of I'll tell you where I'm going in a second. Oh, boy. Okay. Give me the negative or aggravating behaviors of, when you think of stereotypes of men, what are some of the negative or aggravating stereotypes of men?
Aggressive.
Their men are aggressive. What else?
Condescending.
Condescending. Men are condescending. What else?
Big egos.
Big egos. Okay. What else? Pleasant? Well, that's another session, okay? Pleasant's another. What else? Some of the negative or aggravating stereotypes of men. I know you guys got some.
Messy.
Messy. Men are messy. Loud. Don't listen. What'd you say? I'm sorry. Don't listen. Don't listen. What else?
Pay less attention to women.
Pay less attention to women. Okay, I better stop here. I'm listening. I'm just... Okay, let me get the other flip side of this. What would be some of the negative or aggravating stereotypes of women? Pardon? I got to get... What? I'm sorry. Hold grudges. Somebody said too many shoes. What else? Pardon? Overcomplicated. Too emotional. Never forgets. Anything else? Bitchy. Okay. Okay, I got to leave this one alone too. I think we made the point. So let me ask you this: does anybody have a clue why I did this? So what? I always say, so what? Why did I do this exercise in relation to stereotypes? But what about
When
stereotypes?
you make assumptions, then your communication with someone will be different.
Yeah. Did everybody hear what Carrie said? When you make assumptions about people, how you react to them and treat them are going to be different. So let me give you an example. One of the clients, I also work with a lot of law firms too, and one of the clients I was working with was a woman who I was actually coaching, and she's a partner in a law firm. And here she is. She's sitting at a table up here, and she had two men who were subordinates who worked for her. And here it is. A vendor came in, and he had what do we say? Everything being equal, people deal with everything unequal. They still do. He had the right price. He had the right product. He was a really good smooth talker, she said. He was a great salesperson. You know, all the sales all you guys are sales pros. He was a sales pro. But what did he, what did he do? Here's the shit in here.
Eye contact
Yeah,
with men.
he never made eye contact. She's in charge. He never, ever made eye contact with that person. And he thought he had that sale. It was easy like this. And I wasn't there in the meeting, but they said, she said because we're all nice, right? We say thank you very much even when we don't hire somebody. But she banged the table, I'm sorry to do that. She banged the table and she says, and I don't want anybody working with him or that company ever again. And, and shouldn't we, what do we say? Shouldn't we buy it by price, product, everything else? But you get human nature in that way, and this is what you're fighting, I don't say fighting against, but this is what you got to realize and work on. So take a good look at that. It's also interesting when I talk about stereotypes. Has anybody ever gone into a Target with a red polo shirt on? Anybody know? I just want to give you some advice now. Do not do that. Every time I did that a few weeks ago, I went to Target, I had a red polo shirt on, and guess what? Everybody, I had like 5 people come up, do you know where this is? And after about the 3rd person, guess what I did? I just took them to where it was. And then they started saying, they're really, the services here are excellent. It was me. It wasn't Target. But anyway, I don't know, just to watch out for that type of stuff. It's how you make assumptions. Everybody remembers Susan Boyle in that Britain's Got Talent. It was like the American Idol of Britain, and she gets up to sing, and everybody, oh God, who's she? So just give yourself a chance on that too, to make that work for you. So we got to take a good look at ourselves, and I always like this quote by Daniel Goleman. It says, we're judged by a new yardstick, not only just how smart we are by our training, our expertise, but also how well we handle ourselves and each other. So it's about how we deal with that, and we'll get into some of those areas that we look at. And the problem is many of us don't see ourselves. We don't see how we're really coming across. For example, how many of you ever gone into an elevator and you don't look at anybody in the elevator? Anybody know what I'm talking about? So I'm the only one who does that. Anybody ever look down at the floor or at the numbers? And just to show you how people don't see yourselves, I was in this elevator a while ago, and I was standing there right in front of the elevator like this. I didn't know anybody was in there because my mind was on something else, and I started doing this. I started going, I started coughing really loud. I did not have my hand in front of my mouth, and all of a sudden, a woman was in back of me, and she screamed. She says, didn't your mother teach you when you were growing up to put your hand in front of your mouth? She yelled at me. Now, what's your first reaction when somebody does that? You want to just knock them out. But I wrote this book called Get Along, so I can't. So I turned around, and I was really and I looked her in the eye, and I said, you know what? I really appreciate you telling me that, because quite frankly, that's how I got this cough. I don't want to give it to anybody else, and I don't want to thank you for sharing that. So guess what she did? She immediately calmed down, and guess what she said next? She said, you know what? You are so nice. And guess what she said right after? When I tell people what I just told you in the nice way that I told you, they start yelling and screaming at me. And then she asked me, what's their problem? Now, I didn't have time to pull out my slides and show her, but in her mind, she thought she was talking to me in a what? In a nice way. And it's interesting, when I work with a lot of people on different things, they'll get into an argument, they'll get a complaint, they'll wonder why they lost a sale or something happened, and I'll say, well, tell me how you talk to them. And I'll say, well, tell me how you really talk to them. So you really got to watch out on your tone and your voice on all that stuff. So I said the focus is on you, because the only person in this room you can change today is yourself. And the problem that we have is a lot of us, we become a little complacent. And for example, how many of you have read this book, Good to Great? A lot of you read this book? And if you haven't, let me just give you the summary of this so you don't have to read it, but I'll give you the one word that really stuck with me. He said this, and this always hit home with me: good is the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. And here's the problem we have sometimes. All of you are good. You would not be sitting here. You would be not allowed to come here. You would not be in this meeting today. You would not be at your jobs if you were not what? If you were not good. But what happens is when we become good, we become what? We become a little complacent. We start thinking we know it all. We start thinking we're right all the time. We stop doing the things we used to do to get customers and clients. And so we've got to watch that. So to make my point on that, could everybody just stand up for a minute? By the way, I'm not doing any weird exercise today, but I will do a couple. Everybody says, are you going to do that kumbaya or group hug thing? No, I'm not going to do any group hugs or kumbaya. But anyway, if everybody could stand up, and what I'd like you to do real quickly is I'd like you to close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. And with your right hand, I want you to point where you think north is. So with your right, just close your eye, keep your eyes closed. And with your right hand, I want you to point north. So everybody's eyes are closed. Your right hand is pointing north. And with your eyes still closed, I want you to raise your left hand if you think you're right. So your right hand is pointing north. Your left hand is up if you think you're right. And now, keeping your hands up, I want you to open your eyes and look around the room. Okay, north is straight up. Some of you have north is straight up that way, this way, that way, this way. And a lot of you think you're right. So, okay, you can sit down for a second. I have no clue where north is, so I'm not going to guess. But somebody's going to take out a cell phone. That's the only thing I trust. Because oh, no, I know it's right. It's up there. No, it's not. So tell me, somebody has to have a cell phone and do a north on me. But so that's the key. It's up there, right? It's straight up. But the point of that is, a lot of you were right, but I saw like 15 different directions here. And it's interesting because after I do this, I'm trying to tell the point, but nobody cares about the point. They just want to know where north is. Yeah, where's north? I don't care about the point. But anyway, I just want, so we got to take a look and not become complacent is what I'm trying to say here as we move along. So what do we do to go, it's that way? Okay. It is that way. And a cell phone justifies it. Okay, now I trust you. Okay. Okay. Okay, so keeping that in mind, enough of that exercise. But moving on. And by the way, did anybody ever see this other book? There's another book called Great to Good. Has anybody read that one? Anybody? That's for another session, so we're not going to do that today. We're going to skip that one, but we're moving on. So the other way, how do we go to make that 85%? How do we become more successful at what we do? And when we get to that 85%, everybody's heard of this term before probably called moment of truth. And moment of truth means that every time you have a meeting, a transaction, or an interaction with anyone, an impression is formed. So as soon as you walk in a door, by the way, how long do you think it takes somebody to make up their mind about you? No, it's less than that, actually. Everybody wants 8 seconds. No, that's that other exercise. No, it's literally it's literally milliseconds. So people are judging you. And it's interesting, when I work, somebody here works for Lexus or something, but the Lexus philosophy is when every time I've done work for them, the first thing they say to people is, you're always being judged. Every sales, that's the first thing they tell when you walk in. And because every time, and you could be sitting here today and people are judging you. It's not just when you're talking to somebody or selling something. So beware of that, always being judged. So this can be positive or negative. This can help or hinder. This can make or break a relationships of what you want to do. And by the way, you don't have to do much to look good these days either. Just to give you an example, has anybody here ever returned a phone call and somebody said, geez, thanks for calling me back? You ever had that happen? They're so thrilled because nobody calls back anymore. And it was interesting because somebody was looking for a speaker for one of their meetings one time, and they called me up. By the way, they were not looking for me. I just want to point this out right off the bat. But they called me up and said, we're having a meeting in 2 months. We're looking for, we're having a meeting in 2 months. We have 2 speakers we've used in the past. We love them. They kept telling me that they're fantastic. They're the best you ever send. They kept telling me how great these guys were. However, because of our rules, because of our company rules, we need to look at 3 vendors. Anybody ever work for a company where you have to look at multiple vendors? Because to make it look fair, I guess. So we have to look at 3 vendors. And then they asked me this question, said, you know what, would you mind if we put you on that list? And don't take it personally, but we're definitely not going to use you. So I said, oh yeah, this is a great opportunity for me. Put me on the list. I said, I don't care. So I just said, fine, put me on the list. I don't really care. So they put me on the list, and guess what happened? 3 weeks later, they called me up. And they said, out of the blue, they said, we want to use you. Now, here's a terrible sales technique to use, because you know what I said next? I said, well, what happened to the people you really liked? Which was a stupid thing to say. I don't know why I said that, but what happened to, And you know what they said? The reason they didn't hire them is because they didn't what? They never returned the phone call. And you know what the moral of this story is? They didn't even like me, and they hired me. So, you can get away with this stuff just by doing this thing. So I don't know. But today we don't want to talk about just simple things like that to do, but these are basic things that we need to keep in mind. But we want to talk about being more memorable. So, for example, how many of you can remember something that happened, let's say, 10 or 20 years ago, but you can't remember what happened yesterday? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so, and when I talk about that, just to give you an example of this, I've been on 1 million flights, and they're all forgettable, a lot of them, but I went on this one flight about 20 years ago or so, and my son was like, I don't know, really young, 4 years old, and we're getting on the plane, and I remember everything about this flight. I remember the pilots, I remember everything about it, because this was before 9/11, but the pilot came out, and he pulled my son, little kid, by the collar, and he said, "Hey, Sonny, how would you like to fly this plane?" So he puts the kid right in the cockpit, and he's doing this with the thing, and I said, "Don't touch any buttons." I was getting a little nervous there. And because of that, I can remember the pilot's name, I can remember the flight attendants, I can remember it was yesterday, and a very positive experience. So here's a question you got to ask yourself in your everyday, when you're looking for prospects, dealing with customers. What are you doing every day to make every meeting and transaction positive, memorable, and special? So if you remember that acronym, PMS, positive, positive. Forget it. Nobody got that one. Moving on. Positive, memorable, and special. That's what you got. What are we going to do? So to make every meeting positive, memorable, and special, I want to actually, we're at all tables, and I'm going to do a quick little exercise with you really fast here. I might not be able to get to each table, but can everybody just raise your finger in the air real quickly? Just point your finger in the air. And I want you to point to the person in your group. You want to be the spokesperson for your group real quickly. Okay, or you can delegate somebody or whatever. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do real quickly. If I could get you to do this. What I'd like you to do real quickly is this. I'm just going to give you a few minutes here, but I want you to brainstorm the group, and the person who's the spokesperson definitely needs to write this down. But I want you to write down what are some of the communication crushers that get in the way of us getting more prospects, of keeping our customers, of getting enthusiastic referrals. What are the traits, the behaviors, attitudes that we've got to watch out for in those areas? And for example, it could be like no appreciation or sarcasm or not saying hello or not calling back. It could be a number of things. But the reason I'm having you do this is because you want to hear from people who are in your same field of what works and what doesn't. And I'm going to go around the room, just a few groups here, to see what you got. So everybody, real quickly, just give you a few minutes, and I'd like you just to brainstorm and go for it. Okay? So you don't have the handhold.
The old gentleman does, Philip.
Which was?
3 tables over, the old guy with the glasses.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Negative attitude.
Nobody has the microphone here. Oh, yeah. Can I borrow?
Ready when you're ready. You want to use it?
Oh,
I was gonna run around.
you're going to run around? Okay.
I'll run.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Oh, wow, this is going fast.
I was going to say what I was kind of thinking about when you make assumptions about their situation, especially in our business.
How about you?
Yeah, what do you got, baby?
I'd say when you're not, like, it goes back to so maybe they're a little bit more, I see what you're saying. So some of yeah, I think too. Cutting them out.
Glad you like me. Bye.
Yeah. When can I call you back?
So which one do we make with it?
Let's pick one. We have to pick one.
I can give you. Pardon?
We only get to pick one.
No, you can pick a whole bunch.
Oh,
Yeah, you can do a lot.
Let me
Yeah.
report back.
You-
Report back one or the whole?
Well, he's going to go around to a few tables, and then if we miss something, I'll just hit that. But you can report a number. That always comes up.
Presentation. I mean, presentation is huge. You can rub someone the wrong way.
Milliseconds. Yeah.
Well, in our office, so
I know.
I don't really want to figure out how to
Right. Yeah, I know.
Somebody,
Yeah, I know.
somebody else do it.
Yeah. Your turn. Yeah.
It's true.
That's a good one.
Not identifying their
Can you hear me?
Yeah, presenting the wrong presentation of the personality.
Okay, let me stop you here because I think we're going to hear some same things, and I'm going to have Phil. You got the microphone there? He's going to go around, and who's ever the spokesperson, go through what you have, and then I may interrupt you and stop you or to say something, but otherwise. Here's the reason. Here's the so what. I always like to say so what of why I'm doing these things. These are the things that, again, your colleagues and people who are in businesses like you are saying is important in these areas. And you need to take a good look at yourself and saying which one of the, really take a good, and as Fred said, there were a list of 3 things on the action steps there. And I would say don't write more than 3. If you see something today that if this keeps coming up, you might want to say, am I doing it? Because I hate to say it, a lot of people come to me and say, well, I don't do that, and I don't do, or they'll talk about somebody doing something, well, they talk too much, and obviously, and then I see them, and they're talking too. They don't see themselves, and that's the problem. So take a good look and open your up, because this can really change how people perceive you, and again, how many sales you make, how many referrals you get, and how you keep your customers. So any table you like there. Yep. Oh, there's one right there I'd like to go. Yeah.
Pays to be closing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody's got a lot of the same ones. One of the ones that we hit on was waiting to talk, so you're not listening. You're just waiting for your turn.
Right.
And I will say I am guilty of that, but I just have so many great ideas.
By the way, I can say something on that too. There's an old saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Everybody have heard that term? It was a Dale Carnegie thing, and people love people who listen to them too. I mean, what's that old sales thing too? The person who talks, what's the old saying? The person who talks the last gets, I think I'm
Talks
missing.
the most, buys it.
Talks the most, buys it. Yeah, so there you go. Okay.
Okay, perceived disinterest, which can be lack of eye contact, body language, fidgety, any number of things that just show that they're not focused on all the great things you want to say.
Okay, and I'm going to give you an acronym later on how to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy with your body language, so we'll do that. Yeah.
Distracted with cell phones, looking at their screens while they're talking to you.
Yeah. By the way, when you say distracted too, watch out that, one time I was doing a talk like this, and somebody kept looking at me, and he came up later and he says, I haven't heard one word you said. And I said, why haven't you heard what you said? And he says, well, what's that thing on your jacket there? And I left the dry cleaning ticket on. And talking about how people are just distracted with anything? And he just kept focusing on this the whole time. So the short attention span, there you go.
That's right.
Yeah.
The nonverbal cues that come from that. And then one of the things we hit on was an over-reliance on emails. You
Yeah.
go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, rather than just picking up the phone and having a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think we're all guilty of that.
And how many of you done that? Somebody asks a proposal that comes out, and they're looking at different vendors. And have you ever done this? You just call instead of sending an email, and and nobody's called them, and you got an instant. I'm surprised that it really gives you an edge. Yeah.
Well, why don't I let someone else go too?
Okay. Well, give her a hand there. All right. Yeah. Oh, somebody over here wants to. Oh, they all want to do it. Okay. I don't know if I can do every table today, but we'll get some. Yeah.
Our table had not respecting clients' time.
Right. By the way, time is really important too. I just want to say that people give you a little leeway if for example, people don't mind if you start a little late on something, but they kill you if you go over time. So if you tell somebody, like today, if you say we're ending at 10:05 or something, you better end then or before. You don't ever. You ever been to a meeting anybody ever been to a meeting that's just supposed to be 50 minutes and went on for hours? Anybody ever been on those? And it's like, it's disrespect for your time and the whole bit, so watch for that.
Unprepared.
Unprepared.
Meetings. But then also, we talked about being sort of over-prepared, assuming that you know what the client wants.
Right.
And
That's
maybe not listening.
That's a good point. Okay.
Interruptions or argumentative.
Yeah, let me say, I'm interrupting you, but,
All right.
okay. But let me just say something about interruptions. when you talk about interruptions, people hate interruptions. And let me just say this. For example, does anybody know anybody who speaks really slow and you're just dying to put words in there? You can't wait? Take a deep breath before you do that, because let them get their speech out. But when you interrupt people, sensitivity, rapport, commitment are all killed. People just, sensitivity, rapport, commitment are killed. And there's a point at an interruption, if people keep interrupting it, they just tune out. I mean, it's not even worth it. So be very careful. Take a deep breath before you interrupt. Yeah.
And then we just had a last one, which I thought was interesting, is this idea of that people think they may be building rapport, but that may be offensive, like bragging about trips or their car.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, watch about, and there's an old saying, too, and you may want to write this down. The number one key to popularity, does anybody know what that is? Modesty. Be interested, not just interesting. You may want to keep that in mind. Be interested, not just interesting. It's not all about you. It's like, and by the way, there's another term I want to mention here too, and you've probably heard this, but it's called curiosity conversations. How many heard that term before? Curiosity conversations go along with that. And naturally, some of us are just curious. I'm very curious, so I always want to, and sometimes I get in trouble with that because I find out, hey, are you happy in your marriage or something? No, and, you got to watch out what you ask, but, coming from a psychology background, I get in trouble. But anyway, but the point is it's curiosity and be interested, not just interesting. And that's, again, talking about other people and having a two-way conversation. So, good. Thank you. Do we have anybody else back there? Who's another group? Oh. Maybe I just get one more.
We were fortunate to be in concert with some of the other things that were mentioned in the prejudging the prospect in advance.
Right.
Kind of disqualifying yourself before you walk in the door.
By the way, how many of you ever done that? Because some of the clients I work with, I do mystery shopping before I do workshops and stuff. And I don't know if anybody does mystery shopping before, but sometimes I'll walk into an office and I'll be really dressed down and really, hoodies, the whole 9 yards. I'll look really bad, and you can see people like avoiding you in the office there. And this happens a lot because I've asked this question before when I work with car dealers sometimes, and they'll say like, how many of you, and they just discounted somebody who came in, and that guy had like $1 million to spend, and it was just, you really got to watch out, I think is what you're saying with the prejudgment. Yeah.
We also talked about not taking a non-consultative approach by using a feature dump or just kind of spewing your thoughts to stimulate what you hope is going to be a positive response.
Okay.
As opposed to asking good questions about the needs and requirements. Second on PowerPoint, there are scripted presentations that were too scripted, and it appears again as if you are not really able to ask good questions or listen to what you're
Okay.
no eye contact, no smiling, tone, voice.
Okay, and I'll get into some of that too. Okay, great, thanks. Let me get one more group here if I can. I'd like to do all, but.
I think we've covered most of them, but lack of participation, like somebody who's disengaged, we're trying to have a conversation with them, and there's no engagement.
No engagement, okay.
Yeah, rushing the conversation.
Rushing, okay.
Or being arrogant.
Being arrogant, okay.
This might be too basic, but hygiene.
Hygiene, okay. That's something you want to discuss with your staff if that happens, because by the way, that comes up a lot of times when I do this, and everybody laughs a little about it, but it's true. I mean, you really got to watch out for that. And go ahead.
And making exaggerated claims.
Yeah. You want to be truthful as much as you you want to be truthful. Yeah, not exaggerated claims. Okay.
One last one we had is diminishing competition.
Diminishing the competition. Yeah, watch out for that too, because you may be working for them one day. Who knows? So you may be shifting. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and again, you got obviously some others with your table, but these are some things, and we heard some of the similar things come up. So the question I'd ask yourself, and what I would recommend doing, by the way, is you may want to do this exercise at your company sometimes too. I always like to have these things called 15-minute meetings. So when you leave here today, what do I do afterwards? Have a 15-minute meeting, say, what are some of the ways we can be more positive, memorable, special? What are some communication crushers? And don't you say a word. Let other people bring it up, because that's the way you learn, and keep that in mind. Now, one other thing I want to mention here too when we talk about this, I want to mention one thing people didn't talk about a lot, but there's how many of you do conference calls with your clients and stuff like that? A lot of us do conference calls, and a lot of times that's probably one of the worst sales techniques, because when you get on a conference call, nobody's listening, they're paying attention. You ever had that problem? You don't say anything? And I want to show you this video here. It's called Conference Call in Real Life. And just to give you an example, and just to show you, so this is like just to show you just some things that you got to watch out for. So I'll get this, and I hope it works.
Trip Crosby
has joined the meeting.
Beth?
Has joined the meeting.
Hello?
Tyler?
No, this is Beth from ICS.
Oh, hey, Beth. How are you doing?
Oh, good, yeah. Just making it,
Tyler?
Has joined the meeting.
All right, well, this is Trip. Who's here? Tyler's here.
Beth's here.
Okay, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the...
Yeah, I'll be able to do it in like 30 minutes. John?
Has joined the meeting.
Hi, John. I was just trying to go over the purpose of today's meeting, which is to discuss and deliver... Tyler?
Has joined the meeting.
Sorry, guys, I got cut off. Is Paul here? Send him an invite.
Put in your access code.
No, that's your PIN number.
It should be a 9-digit number.
Try pressing the pound key.
Paul.
Has joined the meeting.
Any questions before we move on?
Yes, this is Beth. What's our best plan of attack for the second quarter?
Question
We
actually...
should do.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think
Well,
what we should do.
it actually
is
depends on how you look at it, because the
really
really...
come.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, given sales, we're at
Let me just say that... Okay. That was a great graph, John. Tyler?
Well, my main concern with the projections from Jeer was that it was insufficient. I mean, they're not even taking into account.
Did we lose Tyler again? Hello?
John, are you guys taking distributions? John?
Oh, my bad. I was on mute.
Let me start over. So I've prepared a presentation. I'm sharing it with all of you. You should be able to see it on your screen right now.
Got it.
We are all using Macs, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
How can you?
Great. Paul, do you have any comments on staffing?
I was thinking about that because we get...
Rex, get down! To me, staffing is a huge impact. Is that me? Is that me?
Not me, I don't think.
I just want to go over a couple of details as we move into our next section here. We got 3 new departments coming on.
Break it up a little bit.
Round to the next
We
spot.
want to give me detailed evaluations each
Sorry,
month
guys.
so that we know. That's it, guys. Beth, you'll send out a recap email that could have basically taken the place of this whole meeting, correct?
Yeah, always do.
Thanks for doing that. Dave, you been here the whole time? Yeah. Well, thanks everyone once again. Oh, one more.
Oh, well. Okay, moving on.
Hey, Trip here. I want.
The reason I wanted to show that was the, does that sound familiar to anybody, by the way? So that's why we're talking about having watched the conference calls in there. And if you want to take a picture of this too, the slide here, because this is actually a good one to show at your meetings. But I want to show you one more too, because the other thing, some of you are talking about email, and we need to have more face-to-face conversations, and how email goes messed up. So some of you may relate to some of this, and I'll just show you one more thing here. So here's email in real life. Go from there, and...
If you truly want to succeed in business, you must learn to say no. Look, you know what it's like. We've got clients.
Skip ahead. Okay.
Hey, Tyler, you going to that all-day meeting tomorrow?
I'll be on vacation from Tuesday, June 27th until 2 days ago.
Your auto response is still on.
I'll be on vacation from Tuesday, June 27th until 2 days ago.
Okay, everyone, I need you to send me your reports ASAP before lunch if possible.
Will do, Trip.
Will do, Trip.
Will do, Trip. Will do, Trip.
Why are you including me in this?
We'll be there around 7 tonight, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Kind regards, Trip Crosby, Regional Sales Manager. 404-555-6112, extension 405. Mobile, 404-555-3767. Email, trip@biz. Success is always an option. John Maxwell, author.
Where's that report you needed?
I don't see anything.
Oh, dang it, I forgot to attach it. Hey, Beth, did you see all the submissions we got today?
OMG, I know!
It's okay. Semicolon, close parenthesis.
Hey son, you have to watch this video of this cat sleeping on a horse. It is so cute.
Mom, I'm at work.
Dear friend, I am Johnson Emmanuel. This will come to you as a surprise. I'm the next heir to the throne in Nigeria, and I want to offer you a large sum of money.
Please stop coming.
Hi Trip, are you satisfied with
Hi, I'm the administrator. I could not deliver this document. It was too big. On Monday at 10:37 a.m., Paul wrote, "Hi Trip, this is the latest version of the document you were looking for. Hope it's not too late. Paul."
Yeah, I know what I wrote. Hey, really looking forward to seeing you guys tonight. Oh yeah, circular disclosure. The information transmitted just now is intended only for the person or entity to which it is addressed, and it may contain confidential and/or privileged material. Any review, retransmission, I don't know what that means.
Inbox full.
That's what he said. Hey, it's this poker game I hear about this weekend. Who's that guy? You mean to bring anything, or?
I meant to invite a different David. Okay.
Email can be
All right.
frustrating, but that's probably because you're trying to use it for the wrong things.
Oops, how did I get in it?
Approval tracking. If you're looking for a smarter way to manage work, consider using Workfront.
Hold on, let me get in that.
Email approach to work management. For more information, just click the link or go to workfront.com/trip-and-tyler.
Oh, I got to get back into everything again. Okay, does that sound familiar to some of you there? Or where did I lost it? Okay. So, let me hold on for 1 second. So again, so those are just a couple things because we're talking about email and conference calls. Just watch out for that. Now, one of the things that a lot of you mentioned when we talked earlier was, how many of you heard this before? It's how you say it, not just what you say. We talked about the aspects of body language and tone. And if you've ever gone to any meeting in your life, you've seen these statistics. And if you have, then they don't let you out if you haven't seen this. But there was a study done by this professor in California, which is, there's actually some concern whether it's actually true or not, but I'll explain this in a minute. But he said this. He said that only 7% of the message that people perceive are by the words you use, 38% is by your tone of voice, and 55% is by your body language. So the numbers are little, I'm not convinced exactly those numbers necessarily, but let me point out the fact that he's trying to make here is that, you know, if you don't believe me, for example, let's say I came here today and I went like this and I said, I'm real happy to be here. You know, I'm saying the words right, but what are you picking up? No, he ain't. You know, so have you ever been in a meeting like that sometimes? And somebody says, oh, it's a thrill to be here. And you can tell that they just want to get out of there as fast as they can. But I want to give you a little acronym to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy when we talk about body language being a big part of that. And the first thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is the S would be what, body language-wise? Smile. And when I say smile, before you write that down, let me just say a couple things first of all. If you do not normally smile, don't start doing it all of a sudden, okay? Because your clients will wonder what you're up to, or are you cheating me? I don't know. I mean, they just, you know, you don't want to go too far off this. Also, when I talk about smiling, another thing I want to make sure of you know is smile only when appropriate. If you have bad news, for example, I saw this on the news a while ago. There was this, it was a newscast. And by the way, when we smile, it could just be a nervous reaction. It doesn't necessarily mean we're laughing at it. But there was a guy on the news. He said, now there were 5 deaths in Fallujah. And he actually had that weird smile. And what do we pick up? We pick up that something's wrong with that. Also, when you're on the phone, one of the things that you can do to get people to, the only thing you have on the phone is you don't have body language, you just have the tone. So how do you make yourself, on the phone, what can you do to make yourself smile on the phone? What's a trick you can use?
Look in the mirror.
Yeah, how many of you use a mirror? Boy, that's pretty good. Actually, just 3 of you, okay. But one of the things you do, for example, one of my clients, as I said, I do work with Lexus out in California at their office headquarters, and we put mirrors on everybody's desk out there, and they had about a 37% less complaints because of that, less people thinking they're better, they're friendlier, and all this stuff, because here's what would happen. Go ring, 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 ring. Good morning. They had to smile into the mirror before they could have, because I can tell you to smile, nobody's going to do it, but you have to have something that'll make you do it. So try the mirror technique. Next thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy is the O, and the O is what? Open, yeah. And when we say open, how many of you do this as a habit? Anybody? I mean, you can be honest on that. There's nothing wrong with this. This innocently just mean I'm comfortable, right? It could mean I'm cold. It means this is my normal stance. But unfortunately, what do people pick this up as? Closed, uninterested. You get in a disagreement with a client and you do this and it's over. So just be very careful. And I'm so conscious of how people perceive you a lot of times. I keep my hands at my side no matter what, or in this thing, because everybody's heard that term, perception is reality, which is not really true. Perception is not reality. Perception is your reality, and your reality, and your reality. My perception, unfortunately, is your reality on how you're coming across. So you got to be watching that. So make sure you do these things. The F is what? Make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy. Funny. It's good to be funny now and then. Friendly is really good. Forward. Who said forward? Yeah, I'm going to call this forward lean or focus. So when you're talking to somebody, that doesn't mean this. Doesn't mean leaning over when you're talking to them. But you're paying attention to somebody. So for example, if you're having a client meeting and we're sitting down, how many of you, just leaning forward shows interest in that sense? And when I talk about focus, how many of you have ever done this? You're talking to somebody and they're looking at everybody but at you. Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's like we're saying, well, maybe there's somebody better over there. I don't know, but I mean, that look. So keep the focus and the forward lean. What would be the T? By the way, this is all American culture. This does vary by culture, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But the T is what? Touch. You better know who you're touching first before you touch them. And by the way, touching does actually I don't know if anybody heard of Bennigan's restaurant, but they did a study and there were waitresses who touched people here, and the waitresses who did that got 22% higher tips. So there is something to touch, but you just got to watch out because some people feel uncomfortable with that. And how many of you ever done this? You're meeting with a prospect or a client and you put your hand out. Don't do anything. But let's say Umar here, I'm putting my hand out, and have you ever done this and they don't do anything? Anybody know what I'm talking about? And then you don't know what to do with this appendage, so you go like, okay, And when you got to have more hair to do this, but okay, But it's just that strange feeling. So watch out how you touch them. But in American culture, anybody want to take a wild guess on the T? Tone. That's 38%. Okay, let me give it to you because this is a little trickier. But I'm going to call it territory. And so, for example, I'm getting really close to Leslie over here. She's kicking me under the table. But anyway, I'll be away. I'm moving away. But in American culture, the ideal distance to be away from anybody is what? Anybody? Did you say 30 feet? Who said 30 feet? Fred, didn't you tell me this was the advanced group? This is too, I got to take this down a level. But anyway, it's not 30 feet. It's about 14 inches to 4 feet. And the reason there's a wide variety there, it depends on people. But how many of you know anybody like this? And it could be you, because we got to look at ourselves today. How many of you know anybody like this when you're talking to them? They're right in your face. And it could be us. And then we step backwards, and what do? They don't get it. They just keep coming. And they keep coming. And all you picked up is what? Bad breath. You want to get out of there. But you got to watch out. So if you're doing that, be careful of how that can be very intimidating, and I'm not listening to you at all, and I just want to get out of there. So keep that 14 to 4 feet. What would be the E? Who said eye contact? Eye contact, yeah. By the way, some of you said energy, and what did we say when we first started this morning? People are more convinced by your what? Your energy, enthusiasm, and conviction than anything you do. And do the broom, green, broom, because it does work. So try that. But I would say we talk about eye contact. A couple things I want to say about that. Eye contact does not mean staring at anyone either. There's a fine line between staring and stalking. So watch out on how you do that. For example, does anybody know anybody like that who just stares at you? Anybody know what I'm talking about? And sometimes I get this. I'm doing these sessions, and I'll have somebody just like looking at me the whole time, and it's like, you know how you just want to, you look over here, look over there, and you just wonder, is your zipper down or what? Why do they keep looking at me? So, just be aware of the staring. And in American culture, the ideal time to keep your eyes on anybody is what? When they're talking, but seconds-wise. Give me a range. It's actually about 3 to 5 seconds is the ideal, but don't start doing this. Don't start going like okay, I got to get off now. Finish your thought. Don't time it. Don't get that timing to it on that aspect of it. By the way, when we talk about eye contact too, another couple things I want to mention too. Let's say I'm talking over here to, let me take this group. Let's say you're potential clients and I'm talking to you guys, and I can see all your eyes here. You don't like anything I'm saying. Okay. I got to get. Let me move over here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. No, but anyway. But I'm looking at the eyes. So let's say I'm talking and you're prospects and I'm talking to you about selling something. How can I tell if somebody's actually buying into what I'm saying or agreeing with what I'm saying by their eyes? Pardon? I think I heard it. How do I tell by their eyes? This is one thing you need to keep looking at. They what? Who said it? I'm sorry. Yeah, pupils. The pupils, and this is not always true all the time because it could be the light, but what happens is, let's say we're talking, and all of a sudden your pupils dilate. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. There's a thing that there's a buy-in on that. They like me. They trust me. Something's going on in that case. Now, by the way, I was doing some work. I did a workshop for the FBI recently, and somebody raised their hand up there, and he says, Arnold, you know what, I don't mean to be rude. By the way, when somebody says that, you know you're going to get killed. He says, I don't mean to be rude, but that's not always true. And I said, what do you mean it's not always true? Well, they could also be on drugs. So you think people like you and are going to buy what you have? No, they're on drugs. That's it. So you got to watch out where they're coming from. So think about that aspect. By the way, the only time I would not use eye contact, how many of you have ever been on a plane and you've got the aisle seat, right? And the middle seat is open. Anybody you're getting on the plane and you think you got it, the aisle seat is open, right? And you're so excited you got that, but then they always have this thing where the standbys can come on and take any seat. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And this is when you just want to do this. Read the book. Do not look, because guess what that person's looking for? Somebody friendly to sit in that aisle seat next to. So I'm always like, oh God, don't sit next to me. But anyway, so you just got to watch out for that. But keep that in mind. And then the last thing to make yourself so the eye contact, the last thing to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy, the N is? Nice is good. It's important to be nice. Neat. It's good to be neat now and then, too. Okay, what do you do to just show you're paying attention to your client? Prospect. Yeah, you're not nodding off now. Not nodding off. I know we're all tired, by the way, and when we're tired, we start yawning. You ever been talking to somebody and they're selling you something? They're yawning too, and it's not a good sign to do that. And by the way, yawning is a physiological reaction. You could be wide awake and still yawn. And I learned a trick because I do some work for NIH too, and I learned this from some scientists. And everybody do this so that you do not yawn for 20 minutes. If you ever go into a meeting and you don't want to yawn for 20 minutes, I'd like everybody to try this. Everybody take 2 deep breaths. Really 2 deep breaths. And if you do that for some reason, I don't know, is it any scientists in here? I think it's the oxygen goes to your head or something, but... Pardon? So you don't yawn in that case, yeah. So all I know is basically that I won't yawn if I do that. So you may want to try that. By the way, let me hear, a lot of us are on the phone a lot of time too. And we don't have our body language or tone. So what I'd like to do real quickly is I want to hear how all of you, let's say you're talking to me, I'm a prospect. Let's say how you're talking to me on the phone. So let me hear you acknowledging me on the phone. I'm going to hear everybody's on the phone. So I'm talking to you and you're going what? Okay. I don't know if I'm convinced. You got to watch out how you do this because this can have some reactions on this. To give you an example of this, my wife's an attorney. She works for the Securities and Exchange Commission, and she's super busy all the time. So what happens, does anybody know anything like that? They'd have no time for you at all. So I'll call her, and I'll say, how things going? And she'll say, how things going with you? And and as soon as I say 2 things, she'll go, I'll say, how things going with you first? And she'll just say, fine. And then how things with you? And as soon as I start talking, guess what she does? She goes, which literally means, look, I don't have that much time to talk to you. So at least I know where I stand. And one time I really did this. I flew back from San Diego after speaking for one company, and I was flying back that evening. And I called her up and I said, how are things going? And she said, fine. That was just another fine thing. She said, how are things with you? And as soon as I started talking again, she went, And in a minute of ahas, you know what I said? I said, you know what, Nancy? I am leaving with another woman. And you know what she said? She said, And she said, I'll see you. So I said, she did not hear one word I said. And then I found out that women listen pretty good, because I came home the next morning, I put my key in the door, and she said, well, what are you doing at home? I thought you left with another woman. So, you learn quickly not to take advantage of this stuff. But the bottom line of all these things is, if you don't do these things, people do what? They focus on you and not the message that you want to get across. And the other thing is, you're not as approachable. You ever gone to somebody and you just don't feel like comfortable with them? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You've been to that, and it's just like it's not worth even talking to them. So we want to be as approachable as possible with those areas. So I mentioned words were a part of this too. Words were a small part of this. Remember, 7%? But words do count. And I want to talk about this first. Words can hurt. So watch every word that you say in certain areas. And then also be sure to taste the words before you spit them out. What are you going to say in that area? And just to give you an example, this was on the USA Today last year. 46% of Americans said they hated this word more than any other word. And also the Marist poll said 36% of people this year said hated this word more than any. And what was that word? Just try to hear it. No. They actually said the word was whatever. Yeah. And whatever is a very dismissive term. So watch out for some of these words too. Some other words I would take out of your vocabulary if you really want to get more sales and keep clients. Watch the word no problem. So for example, does anybody work for Hyatt Hotels or any of the hotel chains here? For example, if you go into a Hyatt and let's say I come to you and I go to a Hyatt and I say thank you to the desk reception, they say no problem. What word do you hear? Was there a problem? So at Hyatt's they say what? It's my pleasure. Something to that point, but I know Disney World, they actually have this as a fine they give them if they use this word, so watch out for that. Other words, it is what it is. You tell a client that, guess what? We can't do anything about it. It's not, I love this one. You ever had somebody come up to you and say it's not personal? You know it's going to be a killer. Yeah. It's not personal, but you're an idiot. Okay, but anyway. And versus but. We'd like to do, if discounting somebody, you say, we could do this, but you're just discounting everything. You say, we could do this, and here's some other things that could work for you. Labels, I'm not going to talk about labels and accuse. That's getting into more. Watch out for sarcasm, by the way. Is anybody here sarcastic? And you know how sometimes we try to be funny that way? And has anybody ever been sarcastic and somebody didn't take it the right way? Anybody know? They hated you for life? Anybody know what I'm talking about? So just be very careful of who you're sarcastic for. By the way, accusing means saying stuff like, you did this or you did that, which as soon as you say that, I'm going to become defensive. Labels would be something like unprofessional or something to that word. I'm just skipping those real quickly. Big words. Oh, here's a big one, too. You're trying to sell somebody to something. Anybody know who speaks in really big words and you have no clue what they're saying? Nobody know what I'm talking about? And, I see this from salespeople all the time, too, where they're trying to sell me something, and they say some word like they want to look smart, and I have no clue. And then what happens when you don't understand something? You just do what? You tune out. You check out. So, for example, my wife one time, I was talking to her, and she kept using this word. I didn't hear her for 20 minutes while we were talking, because she kept talking to me, and she says, that's very pugilistic. That's very pugilistic. She kept using the word pugilistic, and I was thinking, so I didn't hear anything she said, because I was saying, what's pugilistic? And after about 20 minutes, I said, Nancy, you know what? I have not heard one word you said. And that's not a good thing to say to your wife, by the way. But she says, well, why haven't you heard what I said? I said, well, what the heck does pugilistic mean? You know how somebody looks at you like you're an idiot? She says, pugilistic means warlike. I said, why don't you just say warlike? Put it into perspective in that case. So again, watch out for those big words that you use too. Always and never. Vague words. If you tell a client, I'm going to have something to you next week. Next week to a lot of people means what? Today's Friday. Next week means what? Monday to them. So you were not clear. I get it to you get them to a Wednesday. They think hey, these guys don't get anything on time. How many of you have ever done that before, by the way? You just be vague with it. Be very specific. And so if you tell them you're going to have it next Wednesday, when should you get it to them? Tuesday. Yeah, to really look good. So under promise and over deliver. Jargon, again, we lose a lot of that. Those are those words that get in the way of us. And take a look at, and all of you have jargon in that. Not being empathetic, and I'll talk about that a little later, but there's a difference between empathy and sympathy, and I want to discuss that. That will really help you connect with people, too, if you do that right. And then the 3 things not to talk about. And everybody wants to talk about these today, too. Just don't watch how you do that, because you don't know where anybody's coming from. And we assume things, but you got to watch out. So watch out for sex, politics, and religion, and people just want to get into it. And you got to watch out, because who knows? So be careful on that one. So next thing to talk about, one of the things that gets in the way of us connecting with our prospects and getting more clients is the thing, another communication crusher in a sense, is misunderstandings. And what I'd like to do is is there a page there on page 5? There's 12. What I'd like you to do real quick, I want to do a quick little exercise with you to show you how to eliminate misunderstandings once and for all. And what I'd like you to do real quickly is everybody put your pens down. Everybody put your pens down. Okay, everybody's pens are down. And now what I'm going to do is read to you a list of 12 words. And when I finish, I want you to write them down in the order that I said or as close as you can get. Everybody got that? So everybody just put your pens down and just listen. So here's the words. The first word, and you can't ask any questions, but the first word is night. The second word is rest. The third word is quiet. The fourth word is slumber. The fifth word is deep. The sixth word is NyQuil. The seventh word is snooze. The eighth word is restful. The ninth word is snore. The 10th word is tranquil. The 12th word is awake. And I'm sorry, that's the last word is awake. So write those down in the order I said or as close as you can get. Everybody getting them all? Okay, let me ask you a few questions while you're writing those down. What was the first word on your list? Night. How many of you got that, just by show of hands? Okay, everybody got that. So what's the point when you're talking to a client or a customer or a prospect and you want them to really hear you and not be, that 8-second attention span? What's the point behind that? Yeah, the first thing you say is what people are going to remember. Look at this. I think the whole room got that. So let me ask you another question. Tell them what you're going to tell them right off the bat. Another question. How many of you had NyQuil on your list, just by a show of hands? NyQuil. Okay, boy, 90% of you got NyQuil. That's in the middle. How many times do we miss the middle of a conversation? Anybody? You know what I'm saying? You tune in, tune out a few times, and we miss the middle of it. But why did we get that? It's a brand, but what else did it do? Pardon? What do we do in sales a lot of times? We say what? Success stories. And so what happens, about 60% of the American public is very visual. So what happens is if I want to get you, if I'm just very intellectual to you, people tune in and tune out and get fuzzy. So what you need to do is create a picture in their mind or tell a story or give an example so that they actually get it. And remember, when somebody tells a story, what do? They remember that a lot longer, or they'll remember what you're trying to say. And all of you had a picture in your mind of what NyQuil looked like at that case. Let me ask you another question on here. How many of you had awake on your list? Okay, about 95% of you had that. Why did we get that one? That was at the end. Last one you say. So what's the point? The last thing you say is what people are going to hear. So you want to tell them what you're going to tell them with an example, a story, a picture, and then tell them what you told them again with that paraphrasing it at the end. Let me ask you one more question here on this one. Raise your hand high if you had this. How many of you had sleep on your list? Sleep. Raise your hand up high. Keep your hands up high if you had sleep. Okay, about half the room had sleep. I did not say the word sleep. I did not say it. I said slumber. I didn't say sleep. But a lot of you, I could see some of you had your hands up. You were so excited that you got something, and then no. And here's the problem. We want people to walk away with the message we heard, and they heard not something else. And the problem is, how many of you ever done this before? A client comes to you and said, I told you this. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. No, anybody ever been through that thing before? They swear you told them something, but their minds are going really fast, and they don't hear you in that case. So something to take a look at. Now, another thing with this, when we look at this too, when we ask about this, when we do our email to a client or a prospect, one word can make a big difference, right? You ever done that? A one word changes the whole meaning? And just to give you some examples of misunderstandings, like all these things here, I want to show you some signs where they actually had one word made a big difference on the sign. So the first thing here is I'd like to show you, this was a sign coming into Washington, D.C. It was up it was up for about 2 years before anybody got it. But what does this mean? It says, welcome to Washington, D.C., a work-free drug place. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. Does that mean you work free and get drugs here? I don't know. Is that the thing? And this was up, nobody picked it up for 2 years. And what did they screw up there? It should be a drug. You know how the order of the words, one word makes a difference. So take a look at that. Actually, I was in Boulder, Colorado recently, and I showed this, and nobody got it because drugs are legal there, so they thought we were all legal. Anyway, the another one here is, this was for a car dealer in Houston. It said, why go anywhere and get cheated when you can come here? And I still have no clue what that means. You know, I just have no clue on the whole thing on that. Here was just a couple more of how these sign and how your emails, you got to watch what you write to the people. Danger, falling rocks, handicap parking, you know, like two things together. Another one was there, sorry, we're open. You know what, that obviously they had different intentions on that one. Here's one to get rid of your kids. Soccer not allowed. Soccer may only be played in the archery range, you know, that. So, I mean, what do these things mean? Here's one for the Wall of China, toilet, on that aspect of it. So, you know, another thing with for church, don't let worries kill you, let the church help. You know, what do all these things mean out there? You know, just to give you another example of this too, I'll show you one. I do a lot of work in Las Vegas a lot of times, and I speak to a lot of groups there. And in Las Vegas, they play dice, right? What's the name for dice? Craps. They call dice craps. And this was, as you'll see by the sign, this was a number of years ago I was out there. And I was at the Las Vegas Hilton, and I was speaking to the Ski Industries Association. And it was really sort of cool because they had my name on the sign. It said, welcome Arnold Sano. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool. But there's something I want to show you on this one here, because here it is. See that one says Ski Industry of America, Arnold Sano, where the yellow circle is? That's pretty cool, isn't it? But guess what they had right underneath there? It said, craps in the lounge all night. You know. You know how you think you're really cool and, you know, you just get cut down the whole way? So, I don't know, but one thing can make a big difference on that aspect of it. So you got to watch out for some of these things on how that goes and takes a look. You know, it's funny, the last group I had, so I said somebody, now what's the point? Because you always got to say, what's the point to this? And somebody says, the point is you have a problem. I said, no, that's not the point. So anyway. So some of the things, so take a good look. And I'll give you one more. I see this in every store. I just took this in a store the other day. You've probably seen this. You know how kids run wild in stores, and what do you do with these kids? And it said this, unattended children will give an espresso and a free kitty. Yeah, so that keeps them running around, doesn't it? So key to look at. Okay, so moving along. So to avoid misunderstandings with your clients and prospects, tell them what you're going to tell them what you tell them, and then tell them again what you told them. So keep that in mind. Okay, another thing I want to mention, and this is something that I'm bringing up, and it's not too many times brought up, but we need to appreciate to be appreciated. And a lot of times, appreciate your clients, appreciate your staff, appreciate others. And what I'd like to do real quickly, can you turn to another person real quickly, and if you have to have three in a group, you'll have three in a group, okay? But if you can get just two is best. Everybody turn to somebody, starts to say hello to somebody next to you, okay? Everybody got somebody? Okay, so what I'd like to do, okay, and if you have three, that's it. But what I'd like to do real quickly on that list on page 5, right? On page 5, what I'd like you to do real quickly is turn to the person and don't say a word, even if you don't know them. And I want you to write down 5 positive things about that person. 5 positive things. So don't say a word. Just look at them and write 5 positive things, okay? And it could be like they're a nice dresser, they're fun, they're intelligent, all these different things that get in the way. So take a minute and do that. I just get a standard picture of you. Oh, I thought you told me to. Oh, I thought you wanted me to cut. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. By the way, it's 10:05, right? 5 after. Okay. Make sure I didn't. Pardon? I'll stand up. Oh, okay, and then that gives me the 5. Okay. Okay, what I'd like you to do. What I'd like you to do real quickly now is I'd like you to turn to the person you wrote about or the people you wrote about, and real quickly, each tell them what you wrote. Okay, let me stop you here. I'd usually let you go longer, but I don't want. I want to respect your time, so I will get you out on time no matter what. But let me stop you here for a second, and I encourage you to tell people these things later too. You know, it's interesting when one of my people I've worked with before is Southwest Airlines, and they actually have a rule of a 5-to-1 appreciate. You have to say 5 positive things for every critique. Did anybody know? Anybody work for Southwest in here or something? But it's 5 positive things for every critique that they have. And it's interesting because by just showing some appreciation, a lot of us don't do this a lot of times too, and there's a lot of reasons why we don't, but I encourage you to do this. And what I would recommend is if you don't want to show appreciation, I would recommend, how many of you heard the rule of 21? You do something 21 days in a row and it becomes a habit, although somebody else said it's 66 now, but I like 21 because 66 takes too long. But anyway, you do 21 days in a row, and what I recommend is when I work with clients a lot of times, I say every day you just write down, you just put on your to-do list, say something positive about somebody, and guess what happens after 21 days? You just start naturally doing it. And you got to do this, and it's got to work. And the nice thing is when you show appreciation to people, the hormone oxycontin, not oxycontin, the hormone oxytocin, okay, or just take OxyContin, it doesn't matter. But anyway, but you get a lot, you feel good. And actually, you actually feel good when you show appreciation to people too. And it's interesting, just to give you an example of this and how it really makes people feel. A lot of years ago, one of my prior jobs before I went on my own a zillion years ago, I used to be the marketing director of the Marine Corps, and I had a boss who was a general, and if we did something well, he would write this on our paper. You know what he'd write? He'd write DWD. And you know what that meant? Darn well done. So I would get these papers. That would really make my day because I'd get this DWD on my thing and I'd say, and you know what I do? We're all old people. We walk around and say, hey, did you see this? I got a DWD. And she'd look at me, I don't care if you got DWD. Nobody cares. But it just made you feel really good and it made your day. But if you can appreciate your clients and appreciate what they did, it does make a difference. And again, not sucking up, and it's got to be genuine. But I really have seen this when I also do a lot of team building stuff too. And you see teams where people, that's the big issue that comes up is lack of appreciation is a big issue. So just keep that in mind. So moving on. So the last thing today, and I want to go over, is I just want to give 6 ways to get everybody singing your praises on that aspect of it in there. And so the first thing that you've got to do, just to keep yourself in mind, is attitude. And by the way, how many of you ever read the book Grit? Anybody read the book Grit? It just came out by, who wrote that again? What's her name who wrote Grit? Yeah, and who's it? I'm sorry. Angela Duckworth. I keep forgetting her name. But Angela Duckworth, when you talk about attitude, she says you have to have a passion for what you do. You have to practice what you do. You have to be interested in what you all these are key things that go into attitude. And when I talk about attitude, everything does begin and end with attitude. You've heard this thing about the glass half full, glass empty. I'm just happy to have a glass, actually, to tell you the truth. But the point is, you take a look at this. And when you look at these things, Hyatt Hotels, for example, at Hyatt Hotels, I don't know if they still do this or not, but if you went in for an interview at a Hyatt Hotel for any position, sales, anything in a Hyatt Hotel, and you do not smile at least 5 times in a 5-minute interview, you don't get a job, no matter what. Disney World, they actually have mood police, for example, that go around, and like if they look at the people who are the staff, and if they're not smiling that day, they don't fire them, but you take them off because what do we talk about? Body language and the tone and all that comes out, and it really creates a problem on that. Could you see Mickey Mouse not smiling that day? But they watch out for those things. So it all fits into that aspect. And what I want to do is just give you one little exercise you can actually do to help you on this. A number of years ago, I had one of my clients was National and Dulles Airport. We did a full-range customer service program for them. And one of the things we did is we had 44% less complaints. We did, with bus drivers, managers, we did training for everybody. And what we did with them is we did something called the flip side exercise. And you may want to keep track of this. This is a way to keep your attitude adjusted at all times. And what I mean by the flip side exercise is when something goes wrong, What's the flip side of it? So for example, let me test you on this. And by the way, we gave them little black books and they would write it down when something went wrong. Because, I can say change your attitude. Nobody's going to do that. But, okay, so somebody yells at you. Well, what's the flip side? So let me test you on this. Let's say you hated your job. What's the flip side of that? At least I got a job, okay? So you should all be in great attitudes. Let me give you another one. Let's say you put a dent in your new car. What's the flip side of that? You have a new car. You have a new car. Or, okay, I got that. Well, whatever works for you works. Let's say you're stuck in traffic. That could be a bummer around here. What's the time to think? There you go. Time to listen to music. Or what about the poor guy who's up there who's causing the traffic thing? I'm not in that. So you can look at that one. Here's one that might get you upset. Let's say your husband or your wife, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, they sort of just took off on you. What's the flip side of that? More closet space, I heard over here, and let's forget that one. Anyway, but it does make a difference, and so you may want to try because I've worked with a couple other companies on this too, the flip side exercise tends to work. The other thing I would tell you too is if you're having a really bad day, you go through, have anybody ever done this and you call like 10 people, nobody, listens to you, or you lose 3 sales in a day or something like that. And the thing I would ask you at this point is, and I'll always ask myself, how many of you do this? And I just want to see hands of how many do this. How many of you ask yourself, what am I grateful for at this moment? Does anybody do that? What am I grateful for? A lot of people do that. And just, you might want to write that, keep that in mind, because you know what? Something's going wrong. Well, at least I can stand, I can eat, I can walk, I can do so many things that a lot of people can't do. So, think of that. What am I grateful for at this moment? And that'll help you keep your attitude in good shape. So keep that in mind. Second thing, besides attitude, is be reliable. And when I talk about reliable means what in your business? What? Anybody? Is anybody reliable? What does it mean, actually? What does it look like? Do what you say you're going to do it when you say you're going to do it, get it done on time. These are all factors. And by the way, here's what I would do. You might want to take away, because I know I only had a short time with you, but when you go back to your office, you might want to do another 15-minute exercise and ask your staff, what do we need, when I go through these 6 things, what do we need to do? What does reliable look like? Don't let them get carried away, because reliable means nothing. It's what does it actually look like? What do you do? You answer the phone in 5 minutes. These are the factors that go with it. So do what you're going to say. By the way, it's interesting because some companies I work with actually have guarantees. And I was out in Hawaii. I was lucky to work with the Kona garbage company one time. And that was sort of interesting. But you know what they put on the side of their garbage truck, talking about being reliable? They said, we guarantee complete satisfaction or double your garbage back. So there you go. So you got that thing. Another thing on there is be responsive. And that means be accessible, be available, be willing to help whenever there's a problem in those areas, to go above and beyond. And you might want to run this one down. All of you know this, but under-promise and over-deliver. That's the one key that's going to get people loving you. So unfortunately, a lot of people do it the other way, and then we get into trouble. The fourth thing is be credible. And this gets back to the aspect I want is don't rust your trust. This gets back into the trust area. It takes years to build and moments to break. And once you lose the trust of somebody, you've lost it totally. And when I talk about trust, I want to just mention a few things about trust too. And by the way, this is something I would do a 15-minute exercise at your office, is like, how do we get trust initially, and then how do we get trust ongoing? Unfortunately, we don't have time to do that. But let me just give you a couple of examples of what I mean by trust. A lot of you know your clients pretty well, right? Some of you do some social things, play golf or anything like that with them, or do things. And it's interesting when you talk about how people perceive you. A good example of this, one time I was over in Reston, and I was doing this workshop for one company, and they hired me, and we did something like this in the morning, and then afternoon, all the employees could go play golf, tennis, swim, whatever. So what happened is I went and I played golf with the president of the company, the vendor named Jim, and another person. And by the way, for those of you who play golf, when you play golf, wherever you hit the ball is where you've got to hit it from, right? So here we're playing, and here's the vendor who they've been doing business with for years. He hits the ball. He doesn't like where it is, and he just talks to all of us in the golf cart and says, do you mind if I move the ball? I'm saying, okay, whatever. I'm just like playing. I didn't get it there. And then about the third hole, he doesn't like it again, and he says, I'm just going to move the ball. And he takes it, and he actually moves it to another place. And I mean, this is really strange. And then about the fifth hole, he hits it. He doesn't like where it is, and he doesn't say a word, and he just takes it and puts it right next to the hole. And this is like the strangest thing. And about the the seventh hole, the CEO of the company comes over to me, and he says, Arnold, can you come to the woods? He didn't say come to the woods. He said, can you come over here for a minute, and I got to ask you a question. He says, you're this customer relationship expert and all this kind of stuff, and he says, I got to ask you a question. And I'm thinking, what's he going to ask me? Because I was, just playing golf. Your mind's on something else. And he says, I got to ask you this question, since you're this expert on it. Do you trust Jim, who was the vendor, who's the salesperson? And I said, what do you mean trust Jim? He says, well, if he keeps moving that ball around all the time, do you think he's giving us a good deal? Do you think he's cheating us? You know how people put two and two together, and they look at that. So watch what you're doing every day. And to give you an example, you've got to practice this stuff too. Just one more example, I'll get this. Is anybody from Pennsylvania in here? Anybody from Pennsylvania? There's a restaurant called Haas's. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, but yeah. And I was going with a dad. I'm a volunteer ski patroller on weekends, so we go up to Blue Knob, and I don't know if anybody's gone there before, but we go to this skier, and we stop at Haas's, and I went with another dad and his son, and his son just turned 13, and when a kid turns 13, you have to pay what? Adult prices for that. So we're going in, and I trust this dad so much because what he did. We go in the restaurant, and he says, I'll have 2 adult meals. And because my son just turned 13, that's what he said. And the cashier, you know what the cashier said? She said, you know what, don't worry about it. I'm going to let him in for under 13 because he just turned 13. And you know what she said right after that? She said, because who will know? And you know why I trust this dad so much? Because guess what he said? Because he said, because my son will know. And you know why I trust him even more? Because I'm still trying to get my 22-year-old in for under 12. But anyway, forget that. Moving on. But the thing is, you got to watch that. And one more thing I'll say. I saw this in the paper the other day about, yes?
I just wanted to, there's a great movie for that has really been impactful for my children and other people. Nicolas Cage is in a, sorry, but it's good. Cool.
I think everybody can hear you.
Oh, we'll hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So Nicolas Cage is in a grocery store or something, and he has his children with him, and the lady gives back more change, and he gives it back, of course, and then when asked why, he's like, my integrity is worth more than, $1.50 or $5 or $10 or whatever it is. And, the reason I bring it up is because in using that example to my children, it
Right.
really made a huge difference, and it is about your character. How much is that worth? It's priceless. And, that means a lot to your clientele as well, and the people you work with.
Yeah, and when you talk about character too, character is how you treat people can do good. So when you go into somebody's office and you're trying to sell something to somebody, you know what? You treat everybody in that office great. It's like, because I've seen this before. You ever seen somebody do that? They're just really nice to somebody, or it's like one of the, who was the group I was, there's another group I was working with, and they always take prospective employees to lunch. And the reason they take them to lunch is to see how they're going to what? Treat the waiter. Because then that's how they're going to treat, if they treat the waiter, they treat like Libby great because she's going to be my boss, and then they treat everybody else bad, that's how they're going to treat everybody else. Also, if you're ever dating too, here's another thing. See how your person you're dating treats the waiter, because that's how they'll treat you in 6 months. So just another side thing there, but so, just something to keep in mind. Okay, moving on. This isn't a dating course, but anyway. Next thing on the list is appearance. And the old saying is, don't judge a book by its cover. Everybody does judge a book by its cover, so be careful of that aspect of it. And remember the old saying, your client's perception is your reality. So what do we say? Soften your image. Make yourself more approachable. All these things are key factors that you've got to do. And then the last thing is empathy. And when I talk about empathy, to the extent empathy, there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy means feeling the heart for somebody. Sympathy means you're feeling sorry for somebody in that case. And so there's some things to take a look at that aspect. And by the way, when I say empathy, I just want to say one more thing. If somebody has a problem, don't do fake empathy. And I got caught on this the other day. Somebody came to one of my classes, and she was sort of sleeping, and she wanted to apologize. She came up during a break. I want to apologize for sleeping because I had this really bad pregnancy. And guess what I said to her? I said, oh, I can understand. And she looked at me and says, you do not understand. So, you learn quickly fake empathy. Also, be careful of the connotations you make. And I saw this in another group I was working with. There was everybody familiar with Gold Star parents? Somebody's parent, a kid who died in the war. And a woman, one of the people I was talking to, and this was in another session, and she says, we were talking about empathy, she says, my son died in Afghanistan. And another woman got up and said, I can understand because my cat died. And and this is where you just don't know what to say. You're just sort of stuck. Anyway, moving on. But you know what? This is unfortunate. We've got to look at ourselves because we don't watch out how you come across in those things. So here's what I wanted to do today. This was the thing. I had a short time with you today, and this was called Get Along with Anyone, Anywhere, Build Rapport, Relationship, Connect to get more customers, keep them, and to get enthusiastic referrals. And the angle I was taking today was this. To do this, you've got to work on your what? You've got to work on your people skills, the soft skills that are so important to you on this case. And we went over a number of things, how to make yourself more approachable, likable, and trustworthy. We went over avoiding misunderstandings. We made over those, how to make yourself the communication crushers that are so important that you've got to take a look at. We talked about 6 key ingredients that you have, and I encourage you to go back and take this and then write down 3 things that like Fred's going to tell you in a minute to do on those aspects of it. I also want to say I'm going to give everybody here, I've made a promise in there too, if you're interested and you want to, well, you can either text me or email me today, and I'll give you a free electronic copy of I also sell it over here as a part of a hard copy, but if you want a free electronic copy of Get Along with Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere, I will do 3 things for you. I'll send you a free electronic copy of the book, although if I see it sold on eBay tomorrow, I'll know it came from you. So, no, I have an electronic copy of the book. And I'll also send you a summary of everything that we talked about today with all the answers to all these things. And I'll put you on a 2-minute tips newsletter, which you can get out of real quickly if you don't like it. But it's 2-minute tips on little issues that we're talking about today. So if you're interested, then text me right now. I mean, well, you can do it anytime. But text me at the 703-869-1881 or email me and just say I'd like a copy. If you text me, by the way, you have to put your email address in there because I need to know where to send the book to. So, but do that aspect of it. And if you're interested in any of the presentation skills or other books I have or seminars, let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about that. And with that, I will end with a couple things here. I always like this quote by Maya Angelou who said, people forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And it's all about how we come across to our clients. And the last thing I want to mention is when we talk about this a little bit too, Mahatma Gandhi said this. He says, we have a number of constituencies, and he didn't say it exactly this way, but you have your clients, you have your boss, you have your staff, you have your family, and you have your friends, and everyone is like a plant in the garden. And if you don't water and feed them, they're not going to grow. And I'm going to leave you with this quote, and you might want to, if you want to take a picture of it, that's fine, but he said this. He said, keep your thoughts positive because your thoughts become your words. Keep your words positive because your words, keep your words positive because your words become your actions. Keep your actions positive because your actions become your habits. Guard your habits and keep them positive because your habits become your values. Keep your values positive because your values become your destiny. And he ended up by saying that every day is a new beginning, and you must always remember that the nurtured seed always produces the abundant harvest. So again, I want to thank you for having me, and I hope you have an abundant harvest, and I'll be around. Thank you. I'm going to sit here. So. Thank you.
Thanks. Pass around the fishbowl one more time. We're going to have a raffle in a few moments. We have a couple books to give away.